My name is Michael DiCaprio, and there was a time I thought my life was a quiet masterpiece, the kind others might secretly yearn for. Not because I was dripping in gold or swaggering through spotlights, but because I carved out something rare. A marriage that felt like bedrock, a home pulsing with warmth, and a friendship I'd have staked my life on. I wasn't a man of excess. I was a lawyer, hunched over briefs and depositions, but I had what most spend their days chasing. A steady love, a sanctuary, a brother in all but blood. My wife, Natalie Portman DiCaprio, was my compass. 5 years into our union, I could still catch that glint in her hazel eyes when she looked at me. A silent promise that I was her world's axis. We'd built our life together, brick by careful brick. Late nights plotting our dreams over wine, mornings lost in the tangle of sheets. Her voice a gentle melody as she read Frost or Dickinson aloud, her dark hair spilling over the pillow. I worked brutal hours at the firm, sifting through legal jargon until my eyes burned. But I made damn sure she never felt like a shadow in my life. Friday nights were our unspoken pact. Pizza boxes littering the coffee table, her head resting against my chest as we watched her favorite old romances. The Notebook, Casablanca. Films where love triumphed, even if I groaned through the cliches just to hear her laugh ripple through the room. Then there was Ryan Gosling, my best friend since our scrappy days at NYU. We'd met in a dusty philosophy seminar. 2 kids debating Nietzsche over lukewarm beer in a basement bar. Our friendship cemented by late-night rants and shared disdain for pretentious profs. That bond carried us through the muck of youth. Crappy jobs, heartbreak, my wedding day. Ryan stood as my best man, hoisting a glass with that easy grin of his, toasting how I'd hit the jackpot with Natalie. How I was the luckiest bastard he knew. I'd nodded, chest swollen with pride, believing every word. Luck, though, is a phantom. It lingers just long enough to fool you, then vanishes when you turn your back. Natalie and Ryan weren't thick as thieves at the start. They'd known each other through me, their connection a natural offshoot of my orbit, and their rapport was effortless, like siblings who didn't need to prove anything. I'd rib them about their secret pact, the way they'd team up to mock my terrible poker bluff or my stubborn love for Miles Davis records spinning on the turntable. It felt like a gift, watching the 2 people I cherished most weave into my life so smoothly, like threads in a tapestry I'd woven with care. I thought I'd built something invincible, love, trust, loyalty, a fortress against the world. But even the strongest walls crack, and mine were about to splinter. The shift crept in slow, a chill seeping into sunlight. Natalie started pulling away, her warmth fading into something distant, elusive. Our conversations, once sprawling and soul-deep, dwindled to surface chatter. Bills, the weather, the kind of small talk you'd have with a stranger at a bus stop. At night, when I'd reach for her, my hand tracing the familiar curve of her waist, she'd mutter about exhaustion, rolling over to face the wall, her breathing a quiet barrier between us. Her phone, once tossed carelessly on the kitchen counter, became a guarded relic. Screen down, notifications silenced, always clutched tight when she left the room. I noticed, of course I did, but I brushed it off with the desperation of a man clinging to a sinking raft. Marriages have rough patches, I told myself. We were busy, me with cases, her with her freelance editing gigs. It was a phase, a hiccup. It'd pass. Ryan changed too, his presence fraying at the edges. Our Sunday runs along the Hudson, once a ritual of sweat and banter, faded into excuses. Work, he'd say, was swallowing him whole. His voice tight and clipped over the phone. His texts grew sparse. A few words dashed off like afterthoughts. And when we did meet, his eyes wouldn't hold mine, darting to the floor or the horizon like he was dodging something. I should have seen the signs, should have heard the alarms shrieking in my skull. But trust is a drug, and I was hooked. I swallowed their flimsy half-truths, feeding myself lies to keep the dream alive, never suspecting the nightmare they were crafting behind my back. It was a Monday when the first fissure split open. I'd left the firm early, a rare lull in the chaos, and came home to a house cloaked in darkness. No Natalie, no text, no scribbled note on the fridge. I sank onto the couch, the leather creaking under me, and waited as the clock ticked past 8, then 10, then midnight. My phone stayed silent, a dead weight in my palm. At 1:43 a.m., the front door creaked open, a sound that jolted me upright. Natalie slipped in, heels dangling from one hand, her dark hair a wild halo around her face. Her lips were flushed, swollen in a way I hadn't seen in months, and her blouse clung to her, wrinkled and askew, like it had been pulled on in haste. She froze when she saw me, her breath catching, eyes widening like a deer in headlights. "You're up," she said, her voice too light, too thin, a thread stretched to breaking. I stood, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears, hammering against my ribs. "Where were you?" A flicker in her gaze, a hesitation that screamed louder than words. "Work ran late," she said, brushing past me, her perfume trailing. A sharp, unfamiliar scent, masculine and wrong, like a stranger had marked her. "Without your phone?" I pressed, my voice steady despite the tremor clawing up my spine. She paused, just long enough to damn her back stiffening. "I didn't check it. I was busy." The lie slid out smooth, polished, a script she'd rehearsed, but I didn't call it out. Some fragile shard of me still clung to the illusion, terrified of what lay beyond it. She climbed the stairs, her dress falling to the floor like a shed skin, the soft thud echoing in the silence. I stayed below, staring at the TV's flicker. A late-night ad for some miracle cleaner I didn't hear, my mind a whirlpool of doubt and denial. That night I didn't follow her to bed. I couldn't face the emptiness beside me, the ghost of what we'd been. The weeks that followed were a slow hemorrhage, each day tightening the vice around my chest. Natalie's late nights multiplied, her excuses a flimsy quilt stitched with holes. Client dinners, urgent edits, projects she couldn't explain because, "It's complicated, Michael." That cologne lingered, faint but relentless, a mocking whisper clinging to her skin. Her hair, her clothes. Ryan's absences grew bolder. He canceled our runs with a shrug, his voice hollow over the phone, muttering about deadlines and meetings that never seemed to end. I was a fool, piecing it together too late, each clue a brick in a wall I refused to see until it buried me alive. It was a rainy Wednesday, the kind where the sky presses down like a bruise, heavy and unforgiving, when the truth clawed its way out. I'd left the office early, restless, my mind a tangle of unease I couldn't shake. I decided to surprise Natalie with dinner, her favorite Italian takeout from that little place on Bleecker, a peace offering to mend the growing chasm between us. Her car wasn't in the driveway, though she'd texted at noon that she'd be home by 5, just finishing up a draft. I let myself in, the house cold and still, the silence pressing against my ears. I set the takeout bags on the counter, poured a whiskey to steady my nerves, and waited, the amber liquid burning a slow path down my throat. Then I heard it, a low rumble outside, tires crunching on wet pavement. Through the living room window, I saw her car pull in, headlights slicing through the drizzle, casting jagged shadows across the walls. But she wasn't alone. Ryan stepped out of the passenger side, his jacket collar up against the rain, his movements quick and furtive. Natalie emerged next, her laugh cutting through the storm like a blade, sharp and carefree, as she tugged him toward the porch by the sleeve. My breath snagged in my throat, the glass trembling in my hand, whiskey sloshing against the rim. I slipped into the shadowed hallway, instinct overtaking reason, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I pressed myself against the wall, peering around the corner as the front door swung open with a groan. They stumbled in, a tangle of limbs and hushed giggles, shedding coats and shoes in a careless waltz that spoke of familiarity, of ease. The dim glow of the foyer lamp bathed them in a soft amber haze, casting their shadows long and intimate across the oak floor, twisting together like lovers in a dance I wasn't part of. Natalie's fingers brushed Ryan's jaw, her touch lingering, tender, as she tilted his face to hers. Their lips met, slow and deliberate, a kiss that wasn't rushed or stolen but savored, a ritual honed over months behind my back. The air thickened with the scent of rain and betrayal, her dark hair catching the light as it fell across his shoulder, a curtain shielding their secret world. His hands slid down her back, tracing the curve of her spine with a reverence that should have been mine. His fingers pressing into her as if mapping a territory he'd claimed. I didn't move, didn't breathe, my body a statue carved from shock and rage. The scene unfolded like a silent reel, each frame searing into my skull. Her soft sigh as he pressed her against the wall, the way her body arched into his, yielding and eager, the faint rustle of fabric as his hands slipped under her blouse, brushing the skin I'd once known better than my own. It was raw, unguarded, a moment meant for no one else, a private symphony of touch and breath. And yet here I was, an intruder in my own home, watching my life unravel in slow motion. The whiskey glass slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the hardwood with a crack that split the silence like a gunshot, shards scattering across the floor in a glittering arc. They froze, heads snapping toward me, their bodies still tangled, caught mid-breath. Natalie's eyes widened, her lips parting in a gasp that held no sound, her face draining of color as if she'd seen a specter rise from the grave. Ryan stepped back, his hands falling limp, his jaw slackening, his blue eyes I'd once trusted, darting with panic as he registered me standing there, a shadow in the dark. For a moment, we were a still life, me cloaked in the hallway's gloom, them framed in the lamp's golden glow, the wreckage of my world suspended between us, heavy and suffocating. "Michael?" Natalie whispered, her voice a fragile thread, trembling with something between fear and shame. I didn't answer. My throat was a knot, my tongue leaden. I turned and walked out, the rain swallowing me whole as I stumbled into the night, the cold water soaking through my shirt, my shoes, my soul. I left them there, their silhouettes burned into my mind like a painting I'd never unsee, a tableau of betrayal etched in amber and shadow. I didn't confront her that night. I drove through the city, streets blurring past in streaks of neon and rain, the windshield wipers a metronome to my unraveling thoughts. I ended up at a motel off the interstate, a dingy place with peeling paint and a flickering sign, the room reeking of stale cigarettes and regret. I collapsed onto the lumpy mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, but sleep didn't come, just the image of them, replaying on a relentless loop. Her hands in his hair, his touch on her skin, my life crumbling in their embrace. The next morning, I returned home, my clothes still damp, my resolve hardened into something cold and unyielding. Natalie was in the kitchen, nursing a coffee, her eyes red-rimmed but her jaw set, like she'd braced herself for this. She looked up as I entered, no surprise in her gaze, just a weary resignation that cut deeper than any lie. "We need to talk," I said, my voice a low growl, rough from a night of silence and whiskey fumes. She sighed, setting the mug down with a faint clink. "What's there to talk about?" "Don't," I snapped, my fists clenching at my sides, nails biting into my palms. "I saw you. With him." Her shoulders slumped, but she didn't deny it, didn't flinch. "How long?" I demanded, stepping closer, my voice a blade honed by rage. She looked away, her gaze drifting to the window where rain streaked the glass, then back to me, her eyes steady now, unflinching. A year. 12 months of deceit, of her sleeping beside me while dreaming of him, of Ryan grinning across the table while plotting to steal my world. I laughed, a jagged, hollow sound that bounced off the walls, bitter and foreign. "Who is it?" "You don't want to know," she said, her voice soft, almost tender, like she was sparing me. "Tell me?" I snarled, my hands trembling, the room shrinking around me. She took a breath, held my gaze, her lips parting slow. "It's Ryan." The name slammed into me like a freight train, splintering the last of my restraint. My best friend, my brother in spirit, the man who'd stood beside me as I vowed to love her forever. His hand on my shoulder, his words in my ear. I stumbled back, the room tilting, my chest a furnace of rage and grief, the air too thick to breathe. "There's more," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, barely audible over the roar in my head. "I'm pregnant. With his child." The floor dropped out from under me. I stared at her, at the woman I'd built my life around. Now a stranger wearing her face, her eyes holding a truth I couldn't unsee. "Get out!" I rasped, my voice cracking, raw. "Michael?" she started, reaching a hand toward me, a flicker of something, guilt, pity, crossing her face. "Get out!" I roared, my throat burning, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. She stood, smoothing her dress with a calm that infuriated me, her movements deliberate, almost defiant. "Ryan and I are moving in together," she said, her tone cool, final. "You'll be fine." And with that, she walked away, her heels clicking against the hardwood like the ticking of a bomb, each step a detonation in the ruins of our life. The door shut behind her, a quiet thud that echoed louder than any scream, leaving me alone, shattered beyond repair, the pieces of my world scattered at my feet. Days bled into weeks, a gray haze of whiskey and silence that swallowed me whole. I didn't go to work, didn't answer the phone, barely ate. My world reduced to the couch, a bottle, and the drone of a TV I didn't watch. Our social circle buzzed with the scandal. Some friends sent awkward texts of condolence. Others acted like it was nothing, their silence louder than words. I was a ghost haunting my own home, surrounded by echoes of a life that wasn't mine anymore. Natalie's scent lingered in the throw pillows, faint traces of lavender and that damn cologne. A cruel reminder I couldn't scrub away. Ryan's laugh haunted my memories, his easy grin flashing behind my eyes every time I closed them, each a knife twisting deeper into the wound. I'd sit there, night after night, replaying it all. Their shadows in the foyer, her sigh, his hands, trying to pinpoint where I'd gone wrong, where I'd missed the signs. Had it been in her distracted glances over breakfast, her clipped replies when I asked about her day, or in Ryan's sudden distance, his excuses piling up like leaves in a storm? I trusted them, loved them, built my life around them, and they turned it to ash. The house felt like a tomb, every corner holding a memory I couldn't escape. The kitchen where we'd danced to Sinatra, the bedroom where we'd whispered plans for kids, the living room where we'd laughed with Ryan over beers. Now it was all poison, tainted by their betrayal. Then came the knock, sharp and insistent, cutting through the fog. I dragged myself to the door, expecting another pity visit from a coworker or a nosy neighbor. Instead, I found Emma Stone-Gosling, Ryan's ex, leaning against the frame, her green eyes glinting with a fire I recognized, anger, sharp and unyielding. She crossed her arms, her lips curling into a half-smile that didn't reach her gaze. "Hey, Michael," she said, her voice low, edged with something dangerous. "Looks like we're in the same sinking boat." I blinked, my mind sluggish, still half-drowned in whiskey. "Emma?" She stepped inside without waiting for an invite, her boots clicking on the hardwood as her gaze swept the mess. Empty bottles cluttering the coffee table, takeout boxes stacked like monuments to my collapse, a blanket crumpled where I'd slept. "Jesus," she muttered, dropping her bag onto the couch. "You're a wreck." I sank back into my spot, rubbing my temples, the ache pulsing behind my eyes. "What do you want, Emma?" She perched beside me, her posture rigid, her voice steady as steel. "They screwed us both, you know? Ryan and Natalie. Took everything we had and danced on the ashes. I figured we should talk." I shook my head, exhaustion dragging me down like a tide. "What's there to say? It's done." Her smile was cold, predatory, a glint of teeth in the dim light. "It's not done until we say it is. Ryan's business is hanging by a thread. Debts piling up, clients jumping ship. We can push it over the edge, make them pay." I stared at her, the words sinking in slow, stirring something buried under the grief. "I'm not in the mood for revenge games," I said, but my voice lacked conviction, a crack letting doubt seep through. She leaned closer, her eyes locking onto mine, fierce and unblinking. "You will be. They didn't just betray us, Michael, they humiliated us, laughed in our faces while they built their little fairy tale. You gonna sit here and let them win?" I exhaled, a bitter chuckle escaping me, rough and raw. What the hell do you expect me to do, Emma? Storm their house? Drag them out by their hair? Her lips twitched, a spark of amusement flaring. Tempting, but no. I've got a better idea. We hit them where it hurts, Ryan's company. Gosling Ventures is a house of cards, one gust from collapsing. We give it that gust. I rubbed a hand over my face, the stubble scratching my palm, her words clawing at the numbness. And how do we do that? Her grin widened, sharp and certain. Leave that to me. Just say you're in. I should have said no. Should have sent her packing and drowned myself deeper in the bottle. But something in her voice, her fire, hooked into the dark, wounded thing inside me, the part that wanted blood, not peace. Go on, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass, bright and jagged. That's the spirit. She left that night, her heels echoing down the hall, but her words stayed, smoldering like embers in the wreckage of my mind. I tried to move on, to claw my way back to some semblance of normal, showered, shaved, even opened my laptop to answer work emails piling up like unpaid bills. But normal was a lie now, a ghost I couldn't catch. One night, I found myself driving, aimless at first, until I ended up outside their new place. A sleek, overpriced house in a gated community uptown, the kind Natalie and I had once sketched out on napkins, dreaming of a future with a nursery and a dog. Through the wide window, I saw them. Natalie curled on a plush sofa, her head resting on Ryan's shoulder, his hand stroking her hair as she laughed, her voice a faint trill through the glass. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. That should have been me. Our couch, our life, our laughter. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, my breath fogging the windshield. They didn't look guilty, didn't carry the weight of what they'd done. They looked happy, content, like they'd won. That's when something inside me snapped, a dam bursting, flooding me with a rage I couldn't contain. The next morning, I called Emma, my voice steady, cold. Tell me about his business, I said, skipping the pleasantries, the decision already made. She laughed again, triumphant this time. I knew you'd come around. Meet me downtown, quiet spot, noon. We've got work to do. I hung up, staring at the phone, my reflection a stranger in the screen. Harder, sharper, a man I didn't recognize but was starting to like. The abyss had swallowed me, but I wasn't staying down there. Not anymore. Emma met me at a tucked-away cafe downtown, a place with worn wooden tables and the hum of quiet conversations, perfect for plotting in shadows. She slid into the booth across from me, a coffee in hand, her eyes glinting with purpose. So, she started, stirring her latte. You're in. I nodded, my jaw tight. Tell me everything. She laid it out like a general briefing troops. Ryan's company, Gosling Ventures, was a facade. Overextended, bleeding cash, propped up by shaky deals and jittery investors. He's been juggling debts for months, she said, her voice low, precise. Clients are wavering, his biggest backers getting cold feet. One push, and it's over. How do we push? I asked, leaning in, the spark of vengeance warming the cold hollow inside me. She smirked, sipping her coffee. I've got dirt. Financials he doesn't know I kept from our time together. You've got a new gig, right? Sterling Investments. I nodded again. I'd thrown myself into work after that night on the couch, landing a role at Sterling Investments, a rival firm where my knack for strategy caught the CEO's eye. Yeah, I'm climbing fast. Good, she said, her grin sharpening. Use that. Plant seeds with your boss. Concerns about Gosling Ventures. I'll handle the investor angle. We squeeze him from both sides. It was a plan, cold and clean, and I felt it take root, a dark vine twisting through me. Let's do it. The rebuild started there. I dove into Sterling Investments with a ferocity I hadn't known I had, taking on bigger cases, working late, earning Mr. Sterling's trust with every sharp analysis I delivered. He was an old-school titan, silver-haired and shrewd, and he liked my edge, called me a man with fire in his gut. Within weeks, I was climbing the ranks, my name whispered in boardrooms, clients requesting me by name. I hit the gym too, trading whiskey for weights, my body hardening as my mind sharpened. Slowly, I started feeling like myself again. Not the old Michael, the trusting sap who'd been blindsided, but a new version, forged in betrayal's crucible, a man with a purpose beyond survival. Emma kept me in the loop, her updates a steady drip of fuel on my fire. He lost a contract today, she'd text, late at night. Looked like he was going to puke in the office, pacing like a caged dog. Or, investors are bailing left and right. He's bleeding, Michael. I'd read those messages in my high-rise apartment, a glass of water in hand. No more booze, just clarity, and smile. A quiet thrill building as Ryan's world frayed at the seams. 3 months in, Gosling Ventures lost its biggest investor. A domino Emma toppled with a dossier of leaked financials and a few well-timed calls, whispering doubts into the right ears. The fallout was swift, brutal. Clients bolted, news spread through the industry like wildfire, and Ryan floundered, his polished veneer cracking under the strain. Natalie, oblivious, played the glowing fiancée, her belly rounding with his child, planning a future on a foundation that was rotting beneath her feet. I watched from afar, a shadow pulling strings, my hands clean but my heart dark with satisfaction. I saw her months later at a mall near my office, a chance encounter, or maybe not, maybe I'd known she shopped there on weekends. She was pushing a stroller, her dark hair pulled back, her face bare of makeup, shadowed with exhaustion. Her clothes were still stylish, but they hung on her like a costume she didn't quite fit anymore. Our eyes met across the crowded walkway, and she paled, her lips parting like she'd seen a ghost rise from the grave. "Michael," she stammered, her voice thin, unsteady. I smirked, leaning casually against a storefront, my suit crisp, my posture easy. "So this is what you traded me for?" I said, my tone light but cutting, my gaze sweeping over her, the stroller, the life she'd chosen. She flinched, her hands tightening on the stroller's handle. "Don't. You look different," I said, my eyes lingering, slow and deliberate, taking in the dark circles, the slump in her shoulders. "Tired. Worn thin. It's been a long year," she muttered, glancing away, her voice barely above a whisper, her fingers twitching nervously. I tilted my head, stepping closer, my voice dropping low, intimate. I heard Ryan's drowning, business tanking, debts piling up, scrambling to hold it together. Didn't take long, did it? Her breath hitched, her eyes snapping back to mine, wide and searching, a flicker of panic in them. "I made a mistake," she whispered, the words slipping out soft, fragile. A confession she hadn't meant to give. I chuckled, stepping back, letting the sound hang between us, sharp and cold. "Yeah, you did." Emma appeared then, materializing at my side like she'd been summoned, her arm linking with mine, her smile dazzling and knowing. "Hey, babe," she purred, her voice a velvet blade, leaning in to kiss me. Slow, deliberate, her lips lingering just long enough for Natalie to see, to feel the weight of it. Natalie's face crumpled, a raw mix of shock and regret twisting her features, her eyes darting between us like she couldn't process the scene. We walked away, Emma's hand warm in mine, leaving Natalie standing there, rooted to the spot, drowning in the wreckage of her choices, the stroller a silent anchor beside her. I didn't look back, but I felt her stare burning into me. A desperate, silent plea I had no intention of answering. She'd made her bed, and now she'd lie in it. Alone, or with Ryan, it didn't matter. I was done being the fool. Natalie's texts came 2 days after the mall, a flood of messages lighting up my phone in the dead of night. Pleased to talk, admissions of error, each one more frantic than the last. "Michael, can we meet? I know I messed up. Please, I need to see you." I let them sit there, unread, letting her stew in the silence, her words a lifeline I had no interest in grabbing. After hours of her begging, I replied, short and cold, "Riverfront Cafe, 6 p.m. No games." She'd come, I knew she would. She was too far gone to say no. I was already there at 5:55, seated in a corner booth, scrolling my phone with a calm I'd earned, my suit pressed, my demeanor unshakable. At 6:02, she walked in, her steps hesitant, her eyes scanning the dim room until they landed on me. She looked worse than at the mall, her hair a hasty bun, her face pale, her hands twisting together like she was holding herself together by threads. Regret, longing, desperation flickered in her gaze as she approached, a storm of emotions she couldn't hide. I gestured to the seat across from me, my expression unreadable, giving her nothing to cling to. "You look good," she said softly, sliding into the booth, her voice trembling slightly, like she was testing the waters. "I know," I replied, smirking, leaning back with an ease that made her flinch, my confidence a wall she couldn't breach. She pressed on, undeterred, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of a napkin. "Michael, I raised a hand, cutting her off, my tone flat. "Why am I here, Natalie?" She exhaled, slow and shaky, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes darting away then back. "I needed to see you," she said, her voice cracking, raw with something she couldn't name. "Why?" I pressed, my gaze steady, unrelenting, pinning her in place. She hesitated, her lips parting then closing, searching for words she didn't have. Then, finally, "I made a mistake." I tilted my head, feigning intrigue, letting the silence stretch, watching her squirm under the weight of it. "Oh, I thought Ryan was the right choice," she admitted, her voice breaking, tears welling but not falling, her hands clenching the napkin into a tight ball. "I thought we had something real, something better than what we had. Now, I was wrong, so wrong." I let her words hang, heavy and useless, my eyes tracing the lines of her face, the woman I'd loved, the stranger she'd become. Then I delivered the blow, my voice cold, unbothered, a blade slipping clean through her hope. "That's too bad," I said, leaning forward just enough to make her feel the distance. "I moved on a long time ago." She froze, her lips parting but silent, her breath catching like I'd punched her. She'd expected me to soften, to open my arms, to forgive her and pull her back from the edge. But that Michael was dead, buried under a year of lies. I stood, tossing a few bills onto the table, the paper fluttering down like a final verdict. "Take care, Natalie," I said, turning to leave, my voice flat, final, leaving no room for her to follow. I walked out without a backward glance, the cafe door swinging shut behind me, her silhouette fading into the dusk. Ryan's fall came next, swift and merciless. Emma called me a week later, her voice alight with glee, practically bouncing through the phone. "His company's done, legal trouble, unpaid debts, investors suing for fraud. It's beautiful, Michael." A probe had uncovered years of cooked books at Gosling Ventures. Fake profits, hidden losses, a web of lies that unraveled fast. His assets were frozen, his company shuttered, his name splashed across headlines as a cautionary tale. He called me one night, his voice a broken rasp cutting through the silence of my apartment. "Michael, I need help," he said, the words slurring slightly, desperation dripping from every syllable. I smirked into the dark, leaning back on my couch, the city skyline glittering through the window. "You're on your own," I said, my tone ice, and hung up before he could beg again, the line going dead with a satisfying click. He showed up at my office weeks later, a husk of the man I'd known. Wrinkled suit hanging off him unshaven, his once easy swagger replaced by a slump of defeat. My secretary buzzed me, her voice hesitant. "Mr. Gosling's here to see you." I leaned back in my high-rise chair, a slow grin spreading across my face, and told her to send him in. He shuffled through the door, his hands trembling, his eyes hollow, avoiding mine as he stood there, a ghost of his former self. "You're really not going to help me?" he whispered, his voice trembling with the weight of a man who'd lost everything. His pride, his empire, the illusion of brotherhood we'd once shared, all ground to dust under my heel. "No," I said, my voice final as a gavel. rising from my chair to tower over him, the king of my new domain. Get out. He hesitated, his mouth opening then closing, searching for a plea that wouldn't come. Then, with shoulders bowed under the crushing weight of his ruin, he turned and shuffled out, the door clicking shut behind him, a quiet end to the man who dared to take everything from me. I stood there, staring at the empty space where he'd been, feeling nothing but freedom. No guilt, no pity, just the clean, sharp edge of victory. They'd taken my world once, ripped it apart with their lies and their lust. Now I'd taken it all back, and more. Natalie lived with her regret, a shadow of the woman she'd been, haunted by the life she'd thrown away. Ryan lived with his wreckage, a broken man with nothing left to his name, his dreams dust in the wind. And me? I was untouchable, the architect of their fall, standing tall in the ashes of a vow shattered and remade. My heart a fortress no one would breach again.